And welcome to another edition of Two Steps Ahead podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. Have you ever gotten to the point where you are just tired? And maybe it's not that you're sleepy tired, but it's just that in life, you're just exhausted. It's like a deeper kind of tired. You know, the mental fatigue. Your mind just is drained from everything that's going on, maybe at work. The emotions that you have are stretched thin. And maybe the desires and the passion that you want to have happen, maybe they're just not there. Maybe the heart just doesn't respond the way that it used to. But again, you show up. You still show up. You're still there, trying to give it your all. You're listening to those around you. And you still know the right things to say. But there's just something deep inside you, or maybe it's bubbling to the surface, where you're just a little indifferent. The things you cared about, it's not the same. Well, perhaps, my friend, we are suffering from compassion fatigue. What could compassion fatigue possibly be? Well, not too many people talk about it because it takes I don't want to say it takes a special kind of person, but it does. It takes a person who cares. It takes a person who cares deeply about the coworkers. If you're a teacher, especially the students, if you're a special ed teacher, that's going to really probably be an impact on you because you care. You know, maybe you're the ones out there answering the phones because people keep calling you, wanting to get your opinion or talk to you about something or debrief or unwind, compress. Maybe you're the ones who stay late. You stay after the meeting's over. You try to resolve conflict. You try to take care of the issue, try to problem solve. Maybe you're the one that says, I got you. I'll take care of it. But you're on empty. Often talk about how, whatever we have in the tank, we try to give 100%, right? If I have 100% in my tank, I'm going to give you 100% of my 100%. If I only have 50% in my tank, I'm going to give you 100% of my 50%. If I only have 10% in my tank, I'm going to give you 100% of my 10%. Give you all that I've got. But what if I've got 0% in my tank? And especially teachers. You keep pouring into your students, and they don't even realize just how much you give to them. Coaches, you give into your players, and it goes beyond the game. It goes beyond the practice field. You invest in them as young men, women, boys, girls. You're the friend that's always there, the strong one that everyone relies on. Everyone comes to you, but they don't stop to think, do you need something? You're the one that is the foundation, the pillar that everyone leans on, but nobody checks on you. And then over time, things start to shift, right? You don't feel as much. Maybe you don't react the same. Things that used to move you, maybe your passions, they don't move you as much anymore. And then you start to wonder, why? Am I being cold? Am I losing who I am? Am I changing? Well, no, not at all. You're not losing who you are. You're not losing what you haven't protected. Because what you're doing is you're carrying around everybody's burdens. And without the boundaries, or perhaps we did at one time have boundaries, but they kept growing and growing and growing. And all of a sudden, the area of our boundaries are overflowing with all kinds of things, all kinds of other people's problems, traumas, cares. And now we're starting to leak a little, starting to deflate. And maybe it's a slow leak, like a balloon. You have a slow leak maybe, and it just slowly deflates. Maybe like one of those helium mylar balloons, the silver ones that just kind of slowly deflate over time. They're still floating around. Maybe they're full when you first get one, and it just goes to the ceiling. And then over time, those silver mylar helium balloons, they start to deflate, right? They're a little cushy. You can squish them, but they're still kind of floating around, but they're not as full, and they don't go to the ceiling. And then they get a little bit less, but they're still floating around, hovering above the ground, right? Maybe you're one of those, barely hovering above the ground, still floating, but you're barely above the ground. But then it gets to the point where, what can you do? Because at some point, you're going to hit the ground. Or perhaps you're going to be like a balloon where a pin pops it and you just explode. But it's hard because you don't stop caring. You just kind of care a little bit different. You kind of learn the difference between just being there and being consumed. You start to be present, but you're not involved perhaps like you used to be. You realize you can sit there and deal with someone. They're in their pain, they're in their suffering, they're talking to you about it like they have before, but you're kind of checked out. You understand you're responsible to people, but not for people. And things start to change and you start to wonder, what's wrong with me? Well, perhaps that shift that happens isn't anything that's really wrong with you, because for some reason, people think it's burnout, but it's not really burnout. And especially not burnout because you're a weak person. Maybe it's because you just cared for too long, and now you're just at that point. You've been holding it together for yourself. You've been holding it together for other people, and it's been way too long. And then ultimately, you're holding it together for everybody else, and you forget to hold it together for you, yourself. You're not allowed to rest. You're not allowed to step back because you're being so consumed by everybody else. You're that foundation, that pillar. Maybe you're that foundation, the combination of the foundation and the pillar that everybody's leaning on, standing on, the support that you're giving to everybody. And eventually you're like the point where it's like, well, I can't carry all this right now. Doesn't make you any less of a person or less of who you are. And you start to realize that, wait a minute, I gotta start preserving myself. Because if I can't take care of myself, how am I going to take care of all these other people? So you start to protect your energy. You start to set boundaries. You start to take a break. You start to create space. And people are like, hey, what's going on with this person? Why are they changing? Why aren't they taking my phone call? Why aren't they invested in me like they used to be? Well, it's not because you don't care. You keep caring for them. And you're not losing yourself in this process. You're still trying to be the best version of you, but you're just not giving everything away like you used to. Or maybe you've already given away everything and there's nothing left. And now we have to realize I need to start giving away my stuff, my time, my energy, my advice, a little bit more wisely, a little bit more intentionally. Because my tank is going to keep going empty, keep going empty, keep going empty. And that 100%, it's kind of like maybe a phone battery. You get a new phone and the battery is 100%, right? Your battery health, especially if you have an iPhone. And then over time, you can check your phone and it's 95%. So now only 95% of the battery's function works. Then it's 90, then it's 85, and it's 80. And slowly your battery health it'll fill up and it'll say it's full 100% charged, but of the battery's capability, only 80% of it now is usable. And that's us. We start to slowly charge to 100%, but what we have in us, our battery is only at 50%, 40%, but we still show up. We try to be stronger. We try to still be full of purpose, but what we've got is compassion fatigue. You might ask yourself, what is compassion fatigue? Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you've heard some version of it, but basically it's the cost of caring. That's what it comes down to. It's a state, if you want the definition, it's a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion that occurs when a person is repeatedly exposed to others' suffering and trauma, leading to a reduced ability to feel empathy or compassion over time. That's kind of the academic version of it, the cost of caring. Basically, compassion fatigue is when you care too much for too long without recovery. It leaves you feeling numb, drained, and detached. So whatever it is, and I guess the professions, I mean, if you think about it, people that suffer from this are teachers, number one on the list, healthcare workers, counselors and social workers, first responders, caregivers, and then coaches, mentors, whether it be an athletic coach or an academic coach or mentors. But really can affect anyone that's constantly exposed to kind of stress, trauma, or emotional needs. But think about teachers for a moment, something that's a little bit more in my world. You give to the point where you're caring about the students' interests, their academics, their performances, their testing, their behaviors, all this stuff to the point where now you're starting to become numb. You become drained to it, detached, because you've cared too much for too long without recovery. And we all know, let's just be honest, that the schools, even though they try their best, they just don't give teachers enough time off. How many days do you get off? Maybe 3, 4, maybe a couple of sick days, a couple of bereavement days. I mean, there's times where kids are off all the time. There's a couple days coming up from the time I'm telling you this right now. There's a couple days off where students aren't going to be in school. Teachers will be there. They'll be working away, but the students are off. Why don't we allow for teachers to have those extra days off as well? Because they need recovery. Because you see the continuous exposure to others, and trauma can be many different things. Like, again, the trauma of being at school and dealing with school kids, if it's elementary, if it's middle school, if it's high school, if it's college, it's going to be different than if you are a healthcare worker dealing with those type of needs and traumas, maybe a counselor, first responder, coaching. Okay. Everybody has their own type of trauma, their own type of stress, and their own type of emotional needs that they're going to deal with. It doesn't make it any less significant because that's the world we live in and that's what we're getting paid to do. But again, we're being exposed to it because basically what we're doing is we're giving a high emotional investment into helping others. That's what we're really doing. We are trying to help others. And so we invest in that. And if you're a coach, a teacher, someone that has multiple people, imagine doing that to all these different people. As a baseball coach, 15, 16 players on the team, maybe, especially in high school, because you had some sophomores, some freshmen that you're trying to build up to be the next generation of varsity player. Then you got your seniors that you're trying to get them to have all that hard work over high school to finally pay off their senior year. And then you've got the juniors that are trying to support the seniors and are kind of in a transitional period because they're no longer the younger players, but they're not quite king of the hill yet. And you put all this emotion into it to try to help each one of them become the best that they can. And they've all got their issues. They've all got their dramas. They've all got their everythings, right? And yet we have lack of rest, lack of boundaries, and really lack of support, whether intentional or unintentional. And then we have to be responsible for those outcomes, whether it's other people, individually, collectively, as a team. And then all that stress that we feel combines with the fact that ultimately, depending upon what you're doing, but ultimately you're a caregiver in one capacity or another. So how do you know? How do you know if you're someone that's feeling this? I mean, there are some common signs and symptoms, okay? You can feel numb or detached. Maybe you're just not interested in hearing what someone has to say anymore. Or if you're a coach, maybe you just don't care that the player's in a slump right now, not really working to get him out of the slump, get her out of the slump. Maybe if you're a teacher and a student has some issues, tardiness, not turning assignments in, you're like, whatever. Could be a sign. Maybe you're more irritable now and frustrated more than normal. And you're like, what's going on with me? Maybe you get that I just don't feel it anymore, that loss of empathy. Maybe you have anxiety or sadness. Those could all be signs of emotional compassion fatigue. You're feeling numb, detached, irritable, or frustrated. Loss of empathy. I just don't feel it anymore. Or anxiety and sadness. Or maybe there's the physical symptoms like fatigue and low energy. Sleep problems. Maybe you think that, I just need to get more sleep. I need to get to bed earlier. Well, maybe it's beyond that. Maybe you're not even sleeping well at night, tossing and turning. Your mind's racing, can't shut off. Maybe you have headaches and body tension. These could be some signs. Stress is highly, I think, in my opinion, stress is highly overlooked, underrated. The effects that stress have on the body go well beyond what most of us think. We think we just have to deal with it. Like, just suck it up, right? Get back out there. But no. But what about behavior? You just want to get the heck out of there and go home. You don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want to deal with anybody after school. You don't want to deal with anybody after practice. No after practice meeting, no after school meetings, no after class meetings. Just go, get out of here. Maybe start to slough off a little bit on your job performance. Maybe you start avoiding people altogether. Maybe you stop showing up to meetings. Maybe you just try to avoid responsibilities. Maybe try to cut corners. And maybe just don't have that motivation anymore. It's a real thing, compassion fatigue, and it affects people emotionally, physically, and in our behavior. And especially, like I said, from my perspective, when you're talking about teachers, it can be something that's real. Even coaches, it can be something that's real. And of course, if you're in another profession like the healthcare profession or first responders or whatever else, of course, it's going to be a big deal. Maybe more profound, maybe more obvious. But some of these other professions, maybe it's not so obvious that that's what we go through. It's just a part of the job, right? Long hours, you got to get there early, stay late, do meetings, pay out of pocket for things because there's not enough resources. Even the basics. I was talking to one teacher recently telling me that they're only allowed X amount of paper to print. They have to bring their own paper if they want to print. Other teachers have told me they have to go and buy more highlighters because they only get one set of highlighters for the whole year. Or they have to go get pencils, note paper, notebook paper, stuff like that. They pay out of pocket. Snacks, rewards. Becomes exhausting. And then the next thing you know, you're not buying those things because you just don't care because you got compassion fatigue. Now, there's a difference between compassion fatigue and burnout. All right. So there's a thing I want to play. It's a little dry as far as the production value, whether you're listening on the audio portion or watching on the video portion. It's a little dry, but the information is I think it's pretty good information. The difference between compassion fatigue, burnout, and all the things that go along with it.
Imagine spending your days pouring energy into helping students, only to find yourself feeling drained and disconnected. That's what science helps us understand about teacher burnout and compassion fatigue. These are two different but related issues that many teachers face, especially during their first years or when managing heavy workloads. Teacher burnout is a gradual process caused by ongoing work stress. When teachers have too much to do, little support, and little control over their schedules, stress builds up over time. This leads to feeling emotionally exhausted, irritable, and like your efforts don't matter anymore. It can also cause trouble sleeping, anxiety, or even depression. The science shows that when teachers are constantly exposed to these pressures without enough relief, their brain's stress response stays active, making it harder to recover. Compassion fatigue, on the other hand, is more about emotional overload. Teachers who work with students experiencing trauma or difficult situations absorb some of that pain. Repeated exposure to student suffering without proper support can cause emotional exhaustion and feelings of helplessness. This is called secondary traumatic stress. And like burnout, compassion fatigue can happen suddenly after a tough event or gradually from continuous emotional strain. It affects the teacher's ability to empathize and connect with students, which is vital for effective teaching. Both conditions share symptoms like feeling tired all the time and withdrawing emotionally. But their roots are different. Burnout stems from systemic issues like workload and lack of resources. Compassion fatigue comes from emotional overload from caring too much without enough self-care. Understanding these differences helps teachers take better care of themselves. For example, setting boundaries between work and personal life can prevent burnout. Learning trauma-informed teaching can help manage emotional demands better. Building support networks with colleagues can reduce feelings of isolation. Regular self-care routines like exercise, mindfulness, and sleep are also key. If signs of burnout or compassion fatigue appear, seeking professional help is a smart move.
Continuous emotional strain. Sometimes we don't feel the emotional strain because it's continuous and it's normal. And we think it's just normal and that's just a part of life. But as a continual emotional strain, emotional overload, that starts to cause problems. It's a little different than the brain stress response from being burned out, where your brain doesn't shut off. And it's a combination of things. They're separate. You've got your compassion fatigue and your burnout, which is separate, but they're very similar. Again, compassion fatigue caused by exposure to others' trauma. And again, trauma can be defined as many different things. And depending upon the profession, trauma is different in each profession. And one trauma may be like, let's say, at a trauma hospital in the ER, dealing with gunshot wounds and stabbing victims and that type of trauma. Yeah, that's huge. But if you're a teacher, and I don't know, I haven't done it, but maybe you're trained for it, or maybe at least you have some training or some education in how to handle trauma. Maybe you have some practice, like when you go through the rounds and whatever you do to become a doctor. Doesn't make it any less, but you kind of, deal with it. Whereas like a teacher, you're going to deal with different trauma things, students, student behavior, poor grades, parental things, that type of thing, a different type of trauma. But to each person, the trauma is the trauma. Whereas in burnout, it's the workload and the stress that takes. And so you could see where the workload and the stress, with a combination of the exposure continually to the emotional strain, you see a collaboration between the two. And you get both. Compassion fatigue can happen suddenly. So if you're happy-go-lucky and all of a sudden a day or two goes by and boom, now you're somebody different, feeling all the things we've been talking about so far, maybe numbness, detachment, irritability, frustration, loss of empathy, anxiety, sadness, fatigue, low energy, sleep problems, headaches or body tension, withdrawal from others, reduced job performance, avoiding people or responsibilities, loss of motivation, all of a sudden, boom, those things hit you. Compassion fatigue. Burnout builds gradually. And burnout you might suffer some of the same signs and symptoms. Emotional fatigue or compassion fatigue is emotionally driven. So you get the emotional fatigue there. Okay, you get that empathy overload. You're emotionally drained. Whereas burnout, you have the work environment, whether it's the systemic or the work environment driven burnout. And then compassion fatigue may include trauma-like symptoms, whereas burnout is more about exhaustion and frustration. So again, they're both kind of intertwined and they both need to be dealt with. But a lot of people just think it's burnout and then they try to handle it that way. And what they don't really realize is that it's more of a compassion fatigue. And no matter what you do to handle the burnout, okay, so burnout caused by workload and stress. So let's say you reduce the workload. Let's say you change the work environment. And let's say people take things off your plate. But if you don't deal with the compassion fatigue, you're still going to have problems. You're still going to have issues because they're two separate things. And you have to identify them as such in order to treat the problem. How many times do you go to the doctor and maybe you're going for one thing and maybe you got a couple things, it turns out. You know, maybe you've got like an ear infection. And then maybe you've got and so they're going to treat the ear infection with an antibiotic, but then maybe you got a virus as well of something, a cold virus. You got a couple things that they got to work on. It's the same thing. They overlap, compassion fatigue and burnout. They overlap, but they're not the same. So what can you do? What can you do to manage it? Maybe to prevent it? Well, the first thing is you've got to set emotional boundaries. You can care about people, but don't carry everything for them. Care, but not carry everything. Practice recovery time. Schedule time to mentally detach from your helping roles. Maybe have self-care that actually fuels you, like sleep, exercise, quiet time, hobbies. Maybe if you are a faith-based person, a spiritual person, maybe you read the Bible, maybe you pray. If you are spiritual, maybe meditation, whatever it is you do. Maybe you talk it out, get some peer support, a counselor, trusted conversations. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that every therapist and counselor has a therapist or counselor they go talk to. I think it's like a part of that requirement, so to speak, in that world. If you're a therapist and you're listening to everybody's problems, you got to get that off your chest. And so I think it's ingrained in them that you need a therapist to go talk to offload. There's an outlet. So if that's the case, then yes, we should also be able to have someone that we can have conversation with. And not just any conversation, but trusted conversation. And then maybe we need to just reconnect for purpose. What's my purpose? Why am I doing this? What am I doing it for? And get back to the purpose. And maybe that purpose then will affect the cost, lower the cost that's on you, causing you all this stuff. So basically what we're talking about is when caring hurts. These are the hidden costs of compassion fatigue. When our compassion fatigue takes place, our empathy tank runs empty. You don't stop caring, you just don't have anything left to give. And that's where we've all been before. So if we don't have anything else to give, that makes it awfully difficult, doesn't it? So what can one do? Well, the first thing you got to do is define in yourself what's going on. What's costing you? What are you caring about too much? And is there any recovery? Remember, it doesn't mean you're cold. It just means you're overextending yourself emotionally. It's the difference between carrying the burdens and caring for the person. And that's why teachers, coaches, even parents, leaders, mentors, we all can suffer from this. And I got to emphasize that it isn't you stopping caring. It's just you're caring too much. And the cost is too much. You're being constantly exposed to other people's problems, whether it's listening to their trauma, their stress, their conflict on a daily basis. You're absorbing their emotional weight. You're a person that has high personal investment in them. You just don't help, but you feel deeply about it. I know a lot of teachers that feel deeply about their students, and especially the special ed department. You've got a lot of teachers that it's almost like, I know we all say something along the effects of, oh, these are my kids. But that connection is even deeper because those students require a deeper connection that normal teachers, gen ed teachers, don't quite have. That connection is just not there. The special ed teachers have to make that connection and meet those students at that level. And unless you're in it, you just really don't understand it. And then, all these other people problems you have to deal with. And so you take ownership of it, ownership of the outcomes. And so not only do you have constant exposure to other people's problems and the high personal investment, but we start to lack boundaries. We're always available. We say yes too often. There's no emotional separation. We have no recovery time, no mental reset. We're always on. Gotta go. We identify, or maybe our identity, I should say, might be tied to helping. If I'm not helping, who am I? Now, let's take a moment for a second because how can I put this? Let's say you're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because you're carrying too much. And that was never yours to carry. You're taking on a burden that isn't yours to carry. Does that make sense? So again, we go back to that burnout, compassion fatigue. Maybe the work schedule or the work environment or the workload isn't too much. Maybe your time management skills are awesome and everything's going good from that perspective, but there's still something not right. And you look at it and you're like, what's the difference? What's going on? Why am I feeling these symptoms? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling like I just don't have empathy anymore? Like I just don't care. What's going on? Well, maybe it's because you are carrying too much of something that isn't yours to carry. Again, you're talking about, the symptoms: numbness, irritability, loss of empathy, cynicism. Those are the emotional signs. Physical signs: exhaustion. You have sleep issues, headaches, tension. If you have maybe some behavioral signs: withdrawal, avoidance, short patience. Maybe you're snapping at people. Maybe they deserve it. Nonetheless, you're short patience. And maybe you have a decreased performance. And again, it's nothing that is necessarily a fault. It's just a symptom of what you're enduring. And so you stop listening deeply. You start rushing people. Hurry up. I gotta go. Because you just don't care anymore. You feel annoyed by the problems that you used to care about, and you dread interaction. So when you start seeing people as a problem instead of people, your compassion fatigue is there. When people are problems instead of people, compassion fatigue has already started. And so you start to have emotional shutdown. You detach to protect yourself. You have relationship damages. Maybe you're short-tempered. Maybe you're the lack of presence there in those relationships. You lack purpose. You forgot why you started. Maybe you have that burnout eventually, that exit. People leave careers all the time. I know a lot of teachers, we've talked about that before, teachers leaving all the time a profession because they're just done with it. They loved it, but now they're done with it. They go do anything else. Maybe you end up with an identity crisis. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't feel like myself anymore. So the tragedy of compassion fatigue is this: the very thing that made you great starts to disappear. We always talk about raising the standard, right? Let yourself be great. Take your passion, make it happen. Let yourself be great. And what do I say? I say, let's raise the standard. Why? So that the others around us can see what we do. And then they can say, hey, if that person can do it, I can do it. And then they raise their standard. I've never really said, in fact, I've never said, raise the standard in your life so you can bring other people up. That's not it. It's not about bringing other people up. It's about you rising up, letting yourself be great, raising the standard in your life so other people see that. They look at you and say, hey, if that person can do it, I can do it. And then they lift themselves up. They raise the standard in their own life. They let themselves be great. They take their passion and make it happen. And that's what we're talking about. So what do? We have to set boundaries again. Okay, make sure those boundaries are there. And make sure that they're clear boundaries so that they become a protection tool. Studies in psychology and caregiving, these professions, show that boundary setting is the strongest predictor of long-term emotional sustainability. If you have good boundaries in psychology and caregiving professions, you're going to have some longevity. If you don't, you're in trouble. That's the same for all of us. So we must learn the difference between empathy, understanding someone's feelings, versus the over-identification of absorbing their pain as your own. So we can't be absorbing their pain as our own. That's carrying the burden and not caring for them. So we got to think to ourselves, this is their experience, not mine. Maybe we limit the emotional over-involvement. We think of ourselves as like a guide, not a savior. There's a lot of times I think in relationships, women will see guys as something and then they want to be their savior or vice versa. I'm going to save this person. I'm going to be the one. Remember, you're a guide. It's their experience. I'm a guide to get them through this. And I support, I don't fix everything because my role is defined as the guide, helping them with their experience to support them to get through. So I care deeply, but I don't care permanently. I think that's fair to say. I care deeply, but I don't care. I'm sorry, let me rephrase it. I care deeply, but I don't carry permanently. Let me say that again, since I messed it up the first time. I care deeply, but I don't carry permanently. And maybe you have to change it to care permanently, because at some point, maybe you do have to step back and be like, you know what? I've been carrying this. I've been carrying, and I just can't do it anymore. But care versus carry. Maybe you have, to kind of help you out, maybe you create emotional separation. You have to have that recovery time. You prioritize recovery time. Okay? Neuroscience, the video or the audio that you heard earlier was talking about the science between burnout and compassion fatigue. Neuroscience shows that constant emotional output without recovery depletes the brain's regulatory capacity, leading to fatigue and numbness. So if you're feeling fatigue and numbness, then your brain's regulatory capacity is depleted. And why does this matter? If you're always on, then your brain never resets. So you have to have intentional decompression time daily, whether it's an end of work, kind of short walk, maybe you have some music, maybe it's just silence. One of these days, I would love to go into one of those floating pool tomb things that they put you in, and it's just absolutely silent, and you're like floating on like warm water. Maybe it has some saline in it or the salt. to keep you floating. And it's just basically a sensory deprivation tank. That's what it is. And just sitting there and float in silence. Wouldn't that be awesome? Just reset everything. And then once you set up your boundaries, whatever it is, it's non-negotiable. That's just it. Phone's off. You're done. Nobody can penetrate that rest time because it's non-negotiable. It's your time so that your brain can recover. It can reset. You can fill up your emotional tank. Restore your brain's regulatory capacity. And so what types of recovery could you have? Well, you could have the sleep, maybe it's physical, like sleep, maybe movement, exercise, gym, stuff like that. And again, when you do these things, you can't stress about them. Just it is what it is. Go to the gym. Now don't start stressing about everything you're doing in the gym or not doing in the gym. Okay. These can't be stressors either. They've got to be just what they are. So you got to find something that's a non-stressor. You got to find something that's just going to be a complete relief. Okay. So maybe it's sleep. Maybe it's a nap. Maybe it's some type of movement. Maybe it's a dance. Maybe you throw on something in your room and you just dance to it. Who cares? It's just your time. A lot of times when I do this, the podcast, it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, but in reality, it's my reset sometimes because it's something I enjoy doing. And half the time, to be honest, when I'm talking to myself. I'm going through these things. I've had many times here recently in this past school year that I'm just like, man, I'm starting to get to this point here. And there's times where students will come up and need extra time. I'm just like, I don't have extra time. Or class ends and I bolt. Okay, goodbye. Class is over. Get the hell out of here. I'm out of here. Boom. And I'm gone before even the students are gone. Well, not really, but that's my mentality because like I need to reset. And sometimes the podcast is like a reset. But a lot of times I'm just talking about myself. I'm talking to myself through all this stuff. So types of recovery. Let's get back to that. Physical, maybe sleep, movement. Mental, quiet, no stimulation. And see, that's the problem I have because I'm always listening to music or something, even in the car driving. In fact, it was the other night, I was coming home after a night class and it was, dark out, obviously, because it was night. But I mean, it was like I just didn't turn the radio on. For some reason, the radio was off and it just didn't come on. And I didn't think about it. My mind was, and I got home. I was like, oh, yeah, I never really had the radio on. But sometimes that's nice when you have that quiet. And then maybe you just have your emotional space away from other people's problems. And those could be some types of recovery. You have silence, you have stillness, you have detachment. And then maybe you've got to develop some self-awareness, self-monitor your emotional state. And if you do that, maybe you're less likely to experience severe compassion fatigue. Again, I reiterate it, bring it up again. The warning signs: increased irritability, emotional numbness, avoidance of people, feeling overwhelmed by small issues. Got to watch for those because they can creep up on us. And they start little, and if we don't catch them, all of a sudden now they're a big problem. Kind of like a little cavity turns into a root canal if we don't take care of it, right? So, daily check-ins with ourselves. What is my emotional energy level today? 1 through 10. Maybe 1, the energy level is low. 10, maybe it's great. Maybe like to journal, write things down, identify patterns of low overload. You got to protect your energy. Not every problem deserves your full emotional investment. Sometimes it is what it is. We got to balance empathy with objectivity. We can have detached concern where, yes, we're concerned, but we're also like, okay, I'm the guiding you through this. That's my role, but I don't have to be physically invested. Kind of like, okay, why don't you try doing this, have some XYZ time, do this, and then let them go handle it. So you're maintaining that you're caring, but you're not carrying this particular burden because it doesn't require it. And then you have to maintain emotional stability, because too much empathy is emotional flooding. If you have balanced empathy, it's sustainable and you're helping. So we can shift from I feel this with you to I understand this and can help you navigate it, because again, my job is to be your guide. And then obviously we need to build a support system. We need people around us so that we can pour into other people too. We need people to pour into us, kind of like the therapist. They take from their clients, but then they've got to kind of offload it to other people. So we need that. And then we need to remember that care is support. We're there to support, but when we carry, we're actually absorbing. So do we need to absorb everything we care for? Probably not. Just ask Dallas Cowboys. They care for their team, they support their team, but they absorb all the losses and the fact that they can't win. Or other sports fans for that matter. Because we were called to care, but not carry the world. I've talked about it in the past, how we're the best for the world or the best in the world. And I like to be the best for the world. We got to remember now that we're here to be to care for the world, but we're not here to carry the world. And say no. Say no without guilt. Overcommitment is a major predictor of burnout and compassion fatigue. So it's okay to say no. I can't give this the attention it deserves right now. I'll get back to you. I want to help, but I need to step back today. Be honest. It's okay. Mental health issues are kind of on the forefront of people's minds now. So it's okay to say no. I want to help, but I need to step back today. My favorite, though, is I can't give this the attention it deserves right now. I'll get back to you. Because here, every yes to others is a withdrawal from your own energy account. So every yes is a withdrawal from your energy account. Every yes, they're writing a check and they're taking from you. So what you need to do is then identify, am I the one who helps everyone? Or am I the one that helps those that I can? Sometimes we just can't help people. We want to avoid overextension. We want to avoid emotional depletion. And most importantly, we want to avoid loss of self. So we need to build values, not roles. We can build identity around values, not roles. And we can ask, who am I outside of helping others? If I'm not helping others, who am I? Well, I'm me. So we build our support system. We have colleagues who understand our role. We have friends who don't need anything from us. We have mentors and counselors. We have the strongest protective factors around us, and that is a social support group. Because if you're always the one people lean on, but you have no one to lean on, fatigue is inevitable. If you're always the one people lean on, but you have no one to lean on, fatigue is inevitable. So practice intentional self-care, real self-care, not service level, not just entertainment or distraction, but restoration. You need restoration, emotional restoration, talking things out, physical restoration, sleep and exercise, maybe diet, cognitive restoration, reducing the overload, and spiritual restoration. Have that purpose, have that reflection. You can ask yourself, does this restore me or distract me when you're trying to have self-care? Is this distracting me or am I being restored? It's up to you. And then, of course, we need to obviously have some sustainable health, helping habits. Okay. Instead of that all-in emotional investment, consistent and measured. Consistent and measured. I am responsible to people, but not for people. We can have the effort. We can have the support. we have the presence for others. Okay. We can be there. We can give our effort to help them, guide them. We can support them. We can be present in their lives. That's what we can control. But we cannot control results, and we cannot control the choices of others. And that might be a place where we have to then stop. We're investing, we're doing our thing. They choose something. That's their choice. That result of their choice is on them. It's not on us. And that's where we stop carrying their problems. Stop carrying the world. We can still care, but now we're not carrying. So we can give 100% effort, but we don't have to give 100% of ourselves. So what can we do again to avoid compassion fatigue? We can maintain boundaries. We can protect our energy. We can have recovery, restore our capabilities and our capacity. We can have awareness, try to catch things early. We can support, but don't carry alone. And we can have perspective. We're not responsible for everything. So compassion fatigue doesn't happen because you care too much. It happens because you care without protecting yourself. And that's the thing you've got to remember. It's not because you care too much. You're not protecting yourself. Know your place, know your role, and it's okay. And don't feel bad about it because you can only do so much. Avoid compassion fatigue. Care, don't carry. And everything will be okay. This is Two Steps Ahead podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. If you want to know more, you can check out our website, radiowarp.com. That's radio, W-A-R-P, radiowarp.com. You can click on the Two Steps Ahead podcast show logo. Past shows will pop up. Most of them are going to be the video show. We do have a banner that goes across the page that if you click on the banner, it'll take you to our audio hosting page, which is on Podbean. So you can listen both audio or watch the video portion of it. Videos on YouTube and Rumble. You can listen to the show on any platform that you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, all the ones. You can do an internet search, TWO, Two Steps Ahead podcast, and our show pops up. You can also, hey Siri, hey Google, hey Alexa, play TWO, Two Steps Ahead podcast, and our show pops up. So we are pretty easy to find. We're on all the social media platforms, and you can also message us through those platforms, or you can email the show, twostepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. That's TWO, twostepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. And I will respond. And I like to put this out there. If there's something you need, if there's, you need to unload, you need questions answered, whatever, and you feel like you're by yourself, there's like no one you can turn to or anything, go ahead and reach out. If I can't personally help you, I will definitely find somebody that can help you, maybe point you in the right direction, connect you with people. So that way you don't have to go it alone. That way you can get your questions answered. That way you can take care of yourself. So you don't have to go it alone. So again, TWO, Two Steps Ahead podcast @gmail.com. And if you want, you could spread the word, tell other people about that. If maybe there's somebody that doesn't listen to the show and they're like going through something, you're like, well, I can't really help you, but I know somebody that could maybe help you, or maybe somebody that can connect you with other people. Go ahead and spread the word. Two Steps Ahead podcast @gmail.com, or reach out on the social media platforms and you can DM me, whatever it is, and I will be able to read that and then act accordingly. But again, you don't have to go it alone is the point. There's always someone that will be on the other end of that email. And so as you go forward and we go through the busy, hectic schedule of life, and of course we've got things being compounded with, just daily life. We've got our own thing going on. We've got caring for other people. And then we've got like news headlines, and we've got sports teams, and we've got musicians, and we've got all this other stuff that's going on. Okay. But remember, be honest with yourself. Tell the truth to yourself. What is your condition? How are you feeling? And if you need to reconnect with yourself. Music. Music's a great way. I play music all the time, maybe sometimes too much. I love music because it's just great. It's the soundtrack to life, right? Music is the soundtrack to life. Exercise. Maybe you read, pray, have quiet drives. Maybe you journal. Maybe I like to listen to a lot of comedy and I'll laugh when it's funny. But laughing's great. They say laughing or laughter is the best medicine, right? Get outside. Get into the sun. Summer's coming. If you exercise and you have a gym membership, hey, that's great. But maybe you do something outside. Go for a walk. Lie out in the backyard, whatever. Get some sun. Get outside. Be creative. Maybe you create something. Maybe you paint, and maybe it's the worst thing ever. But hey, you're being creative. You're painting. And then maybe you spend time with other people who don't need something from you. But whatever it is, you got to remember, you are a human. You are a person. You're not just a helper. Sometimes the reason you feel empty is not because you have nothing left to give, but you've lost connection with the things that refill you. Because before you can fully return to others, you have to return to yourself. So take care of yourself. Make sure that you are caring for yourself first so that you can be in a position to care for other people. And remember, there is a difference between care, C-A-R-E, and carrying, C-A-R-R-Y, or I should say carry, care and carry, or care and carrying, caring and caring. You get what I mean. There's a difference, okay? And so know the difference is what I'm getting to. The point is getting to is know the difference. And if you need time to step aside, it's okay to say no. I can't give you my full attention at this time. That's not quitting. That's recovery. And it's okay to recover. It's okay to take care of yourself. I care, but I cannot take this on right now. I want to support you, but I need to protect my mental space. I'm here for you. I'm available, but not at this time. I can listen, but I cannot fix this for you. Because every healthy boundary is a declaration that your well-being matters too. Take care of yourself. And you take care of yourself, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a first responder, a healthcare worker, a counselor, a coach, a mentor, a parent, whatever. Or maybe you're a child taking care of parents. Take care of yourself first because your well-being matters. And if you are right, then you're going to be a better provider. You're going to be able to take care of those people and be someone that can handle the situation much healthier. So every healthy boundary is a declaration that your well-being matters too. Take care of yourself and everything else will be better. Again, 2 Steps Ahead podcast encouraging you. Take your passion, make it happen. Let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. Hey, thanks for listening. Do tell a friend. Until next time, God bless.